Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Salam, Mandis Freedens. Salam, Level Earth. Welcome to the stream. This is going to be a very, I guess, controversial stream. As you can tell, there's a lot of birds in the thumbnail for the video. So one thing I haven't really discussed is kind of the creatures in the Quran. One sec here. Hope you guys can hear me. Let me know if you guys can hear me. But basically, the creatures in the Quran are so amazing. Let me see here. All right. Thank you, Level Earth. Salam alaikum, Rocky Balboa. Salam alaikum, Soaring Bird. I know there's a bit of a delay. Salam alaikum, Shah Omid. Salam alaikum, IRMBV. Welcome all to the stream. Trying out this new system. Hopefully it works, inshallah. All right. So, if you just came on, we're going to be talking a lot about birds and animals in the Quran. Salam, new path to return. New path, no return. And these birds have been kind of like obscured from the pages of the Quran, in the sense that I believe that Allah is trying to show us the unseen constantly, because out of His mercy, He knows that's the only thing we will never be able to derive. We will never be able to logically come to know without revelation what the unseen is. So, let me see if I can. Yeah. So I'm just going to get right into it. And you may be surprised that what our traditions, cultures, mythologies, legends show about the creatures in the Quran is very similar to what is mentioned. It's like Allah gives you the pieces, and if you strive to understand, then things will become a little bit more clearer for you why something like that is in there. And we're just accustomed to everything being de-glorified in the Quran. So the Prophet stories are just, people in the desert in Bronze Age times or Stone Age times. And much more, even the villains in the Quran are done dirty. And they're shown to be like these little, minuscule characters in history. I see the same thing for the earth, the same thing for the angels, the jinns. Everything is just made to look insignificant. And man de Friedens, you've already kind of gone to straight to the point. I'm going to show you guys very likely that a lot of the creatures we are told don't exist. That's simply not the case. In fact, we still use them as insignia to this day. And it's only secret societies and occult members that understand very well that these things exist, hence why they constantly put them in our faces, in our movies, and everything. And once upon a time, it was obviously way more pronounced. So let's just go right into it. So birds in the Quran are mentioned so many times, and it's almost ambiguous. Like it's almost like they're a collective noun, because you can see sometimes it's tayran, sometimes it's a tayr. I would kind of move towards more of it being a collective group. And we have these collective groups. If you think about bees, bees are in the Quran. We'll briefly touch on that. Bees are actually a hive mind. They operate in that sense. Angels, in a similar way, obviously angels have individual players from them, but I think that by and large, they're always kind of referenced as this body of individuals. So, what's interesting is this word evil omen is there, right? But then you scroll down a bit and you can see that evil omen sometimes means a bird, ta'ir. So ta'ir is like you're talking about something, perhaps birds or plural. Here we have evil omen and ta'ir in the same category. So if you go to this verse, and mind you, I don't take the translation with any weight, but I'm just showing you like how what they present doesn't work, right? So clearly, ta'ir may be instead something that flies. We get the sense that birds are basically flying things. It's not even necessarily species of birds, but clearly I would imagine what we call birds today are very much what this describes. But clearly, like, when Allah is talking about dabata wa tayr, it's kind of encompassing all the modes of life that can exist. وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ, so there is no beast in the earth, and no طائر that يطير, that's how you know it's defined as something that flies, بِجَنَاحَيْهِ, بِجَنَاحَيْهِ, by its two wings, except communities like you, or exemplifying you, represented by you. This is so key to understand. ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء. Then to your Lord you will be gathered. So this word, neglecting, nothing is neglected from the book. That's why you can find every kind of concept in there. So if you wonder, like, oh, the Quran fails to mention the details of this, like for part 6 Mecca, I kept seeing this idea, oh, well, the hadith is the thing that really, adds to the Isra and Mi'raj of the Prophet Muhammad. No, not at all. In fact, it just complicates things and adds unnecessary and frankly embarrassing information, such as the Prophet, was arguing with Allah about how many prayers we should do a day. So clearly people have tampered with whatever content that hadith talked about. So if you think about this, like, for example, fate, right? There is no way ta'irahu means his fate. Clearly what they're trying to hide is there is something that flies connected to us at any point. Okay, some people, the jinn would fall under the category of flying things. And if you listen to the last live stream, you'd understand that flying and swimming is analogous. It's practically analogous. Just look at, videos of manta rays, those beautiful creatures that they're just made of wings and a long tail. They look as if they're flying because they're underwater. The fish, in the same way, I mean, the sun and moon are described as swimming, being above our heads in the heavens. That just gives you a clue, like what we see in the ocean is practically a sign for what we see above our heads. So yeah, this is really interesting to really conceptualize, because what we see here is the people had some idea or understanding. Musa had some kind of a flying thing next to him, right? Yotiru is flying. Ta'ir is something that's a volant, like a flying thing. إِنَّمَا طَائِرُهُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. And of course, this word, like, they have just butchered the meaning, right? Like, طَيَّرُ has to do with flying. How could it mean ascribing evil omens? Again, I'm not sure what to make of that, other than clearly there's something related to birds and flying when it comes to this word ta'ir. And the evidence here to yutiru, I already showed that verse. طَيَّرْنَا. That's in Surah Yasin, right? They wanted to stone the messengers, apparently. Okay. So there's a lot of references, and something to keep in mind is the birds has a very different connotation than birds we would talk about. For example, like typically in Arabic today, the word for bird, like, bird you would see in the springtime nesting, is called the asfura, asfur, asafir, asfura. Those are like little sparrows and birds that we all know and understand. But when Allah puts this definite article on anything in the Quran, automatically your brain should go, okay, this is something really special. So angels would fit this category, and of course jinns, but mainly what we are to discuss today is the animal world. Because just like humans, we have these kind of amazing examples of literal signs of Allah. So too, we're going to see the same thing as in the animal world, because like that verse mentioned, all the beasts and all the birds are communities like us. And we have stories of the prophets having all of these blessed creatures around them. So I believe this is Dawood, where you have the glorification. Not sure what to make of sabbahu. Other than this is related to swimming, and basically when you talk about ascending into the heavens or descending into the ocean, Allah is exalted above everything. The birds were assembled, all of them. Now, you can imagine, like, Allah could have said very generally if he meant every single type of bird was assembled for Dawood. That would be very crowded very quickly. However, this is a specific category that you're going to find are related to being messengers. Yes, it's not just humans and angels and jinns that are messengers. There are creature messengers as well. It sounds a bit strange. But once upon a time, there were all kinds of beings on this earth that nobody had a problem with. We used to put all kinds of different, even to this day, we still talk about these creatures. But back then, it was just normalized. People were just aware. And for whatever reason, right now, we're in some kind of a hiatus, a period of suspension of the messengers. You can call it an interregnum. And you can imagine what happened, right? In the story of Musa, we have the people creating the calf from their ornaments, right? Which is known as the ijl. And right now we have people trying to ajil the hour, to hasten the hour. So it's a bit of an interesting position we find ourselves in. But yeah, you can find this idea in so much literature that basically the magic, the kind of realm of the unseen, has kind of subsided away to the extremities of our world and underground and places we cannot easily access. So what we're left with is this test where Allah wants us to believe and confide by Him via the unseen. That's in Surah Al-Baqarah, the opening chapter. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُوا بِالْغَيْبِ. So the hidden world. Of course, what a brilliant way to test which of humanity has faith in the Creator, given that, nothing is clearly observable, but He put His signs everywhere. Put His signs in our stories, He put the signs in the Qur'an, He put the signs in our sciences, He put the signs in our nature, He put the signs in us even. If we look at our own anatomy, we'll find so much symbolism for what the Quran discusses literally. And, of course you have metaphors in the Quran, no doubt, but those metaphors are drawn from real things, always. So you're going to notice on the screen a discrepancy here in the translation. I wonder if you guys can notice what the discrepancy is, okay? Let me just go back to the chat. Tayr and Tur share the same Proto-Arabic word root. Very interesting, Monday Frieden. There's a verse in the Quran that says, we created you atwaran. Atwaran is just the plural of Tur, what they call mounts. They're like pedestals for these giant plants, trees, whatever you want to call them. And Allah doesn't say like. We didn't create you in like or in stages or anything. We created you this. And the only thing I can really wrap my mind around when I come to that is basically that these mounds or these mounts, it's a similar word, is something that every human being, pretty much what it seems like, will spring out of on the day of resurrection. So He did create us like that and regrow us like seeds into a new body for eternity. ARMB, so all these creatures existed? Well, it's not me telling you this. The Quran seems to point that there are exceptional creatures that exist somewhere in the world and have definitely existed in history. For example, this is not hard for us to accept because we already accept that there's megafauna in science. We accept that there's megaflora, so like giant trees, giant mushrooms, giant plants. We accept that there's you know, dinosaurs, all of this stuff, all these titanic creatures of humongous proportions that have totally different physiology than we can understand. They're not simply reptiles. And by the way, did you know that birds officially are a type of dinosaur? Dinosaurs exist today as birds. They just have more feathers. So clearly what you're going to see is some kind of a union between the creatures we call reptiles and the creatures we call birds. One has scales, one has feathers. So really all they did, I mean, you can find further research on this for yourself, but they just took all of our ideas about, you know, legends and dragons and all that stuff, and they just tweaked it a bit. Now they're called dinosaurs. And funny enough, nobody found any bones until the 1800s, when everything was doctored and reset for our civilization. Really? So you're telling me millions of years of decomposition was just under the surface there for the 1800s folks in top hats and Western clothing to find and discover just out of the blue. Nobody else had discovered any bones on any large scale. Clearly, they have just perverted things upside down. I mean, science, branches of science are basically magic today. They basically work on alchemical principles. And just look at the last few years, what happened. All the experts. I'm going to make a video about that, actually. But man des Friedens, what is your understanding of the unseen, al-ghaib? Well, al-ghaib literally means hidden. It just means hidden. So these are things that are just hidden from us, especially in our time. And definitely when it comes to even back in history, a lot of these things were not as apparent as when you come to Suleiman's era. Suleiman had some kind of a realm that we cannot even fathom. And that's what he says, grant me a kingdom, the likes of which has never been seen. So this is like amazing. This is a point in human history where jinns and devils and these birds and creatures and everything just come into fold. Even the angels were coming down. I'm not sure if exactly in the time of Suleiman, but it's referenced in Surah Al-Baqarah, where the angels are teaching things, and later the devils turned that into magic. I'm not sure if that's an accurate understanding, but clearly that's something we should take into consideration. Yeah, I mean, this encompasses everything, right? The seen and the unseen. Allah is the witness, and He knows the ghaib. That's really what is essential for us, because we're not part of that. We are part of the seen world. Okay. So, if you haven't noticed, this word means wing. In every account, it just means wing. But here in Musa's story, it means side. I don't know why. I guess they can't explain it. So when they can't explain something, like the historians and the scientists, they just put whatever they want in there. This is one of the great signs, and it's taught to Musa by Allah directly. He puts his hand towards his wing. That's what it says, janahika. And then it springs forth white. Okay. Same thing is mentioned in this chapter. Usluk. This word is related to inserting. For example, one of the interesting thing, I'll talk about qubits later on in the stream, but one of the interesting things is Allah says, insert the person into a chain 70 cubits long, okay? ضرعها سبعون. One of the only times the word 70, number 70, is used. And how much is 70 cubits? It's about 30 meters. What is a chain doing being inserted in the people of hellfire? 70 cubits long. Well, clearly we are going to be created into a new creation. Exactly how they say Adam was 70 cubits tall. When we're collected on the day of collection, which is the word for Friday, which is according to Sunni tradition the same day Adam was created. So it makes sense we return back to our original form as Bani Adam. But this time, humanity will diverge. So you'll have people that are born in an eternalized body 70 cubits tall for the fire, and the same idea but in a different way for the garden. But this is what he's telling Musa. I mean, this is something insane to me. Okay. Jebika. Jebika are your bosom, your chest, your bosom, your pocket, formed by your, what they call in, Old English, your breast. Okay. And this is after, right? And draw towards yourself janahaka, your wing, from the rahbi. Okay. This word, turhibuna. Okay, let me show you this. This is from chapter 8, okay, of the Quran. It's called the spoils of war. So remember Musa, this wing that he possesses, and I can get into, all kinds of things regarding that. Humans have wings. And that's why whenever wing is used for Musa, who is a model for the believers, really, he is a major model for the believers. Not unlike the Prophet Muhammad, not unlike all the prophets. But every time the wing is used for humans, it has a fatha at the end, an a diacritical mark. But every time it's used for angels and birds, it has a kasra, e sound. So that tells me that these wings are related to something there, but it's not seen. It doesn't operate in the dunya, but it will definitely operate in the hereafter. Anyway, that's a whole other topic, but look at this verse. This verse means to prepare for them what you are able from power and from ribati al-khayli, to terrify therewith your enemy, Allah's enemy, and your enemy, and akhirina, from besides them. So what's interesting about this is from the chapter Spoils of War, so there's clearly a war involved. And Allah is telling the believers, the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, to terrify the enemies of Allah with their horses. Now, the word for horse in Arabic today, maybe it's changed, but is literally hisan. This is the word for horse. Allah is not going to use horses necessarily when there's all kinds of riding creatures, mounted creatures. And sometimes it doesn't even say horses in some translation, it just says mounts. Okay? Please, think a bit carefully here. Why would Allah why would he think that you could terrify the enemy with cavalry? If we're to understand cavalry in the same sense, it's just horses and stuff. Shaitan has his own cavalry. Of course, we don't see that, but he has his own army. Pharaoh had an army. A lot of different cultures had armies like this. But why would we possibly scare the enemy of Allah with horses, camels? Like, in the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad, it's just kind of these tribal wars. Clearly, we have to think outside the box. These creatures are terrifying. They really are. And of course, that's why it says steeds of war here and not horses, because they understand perfectly well what they used to use in warfare back then will be akin to what we use today technologically. If you have like an F-16, that's a pretty scary thing. I mean, where you live in any part of the world, you'll notice that technology has just replaced the natural world that used to be tameable, that used to be apparent and more accessible than today. So if you have in the Middle Ages, right, they don't have any F-16s back then, apparently. Maybe some semblance of that existed, but clearly it's far superior to use what Allah already created. And we have just clearly mimicked that in our technology. I mean, for example, I can show you an example of that. This is a cool picture. So they have made this stealth fighter, this bomber, as an exact replica of the shape the peregrine falcon makes. Okay? We copy what Allah created identically, as close as we can get as possible, because that's the perfect form. And the technology is just a fake, it's just a sad imitation of it. And this is what we have to resort to, since this world, it has been diminished in our time. Okay. But it's coming back. So clearly, Allah says these are burhanani from your Lord, 2 evidences. What are the 2 evidences? The fact that his hand came out, and the fact that he has this wing from the rahbi, something that inspires terror. Yeah, so when we get into the whole discussion on the birds, the thing that comes apparent is that Dawood and Suleiman in particular, tells his people, Ya ayyuhan nas. Now this would be, in my mind, encompassing all of the sentient creatures, including jinn, including men, that they have been taught mantiqa at-tayr. Okay, so, and we have been given, or we have been brought from everything. Indeed, this is surely the favor of the evident, the manifest. Interesting uses those words because it's almost like he's saying that this favor is something that's usually hidden, and during Suleiman's time, it became manifest, mubin. And like how you have this concept of handiyadis, right, where something connected by wah, like for example, وَأَوْتَيْنَا. Notice how the wa looks like a connection, right? It's like they're saying the same thing in two different ways. Obey Allah, obey the messenger. You obey Allah's message, you obey the conveyor of the message. Two different ways. It's not poetry, it's methodical to get your understanding that everything comes in pairs in this creation. So whatever this mantiqa at-tayr is, that is related to everything. At that time, that is related to something very special. It's like a means of access to fountains of knowledge. Now, mantiqa is interesting because clearly, like the word for language in Arabic today is lugha, lughat. And funny enough, if we go to one mention of this root, laghun, it means ill speech, vain talk, to make noise, unintentional, thoughtful utterances. So the word we use for language today is futile speech. It's actually distorted because we used to speak Arabic. Arabic, in a sense, refers to a tongue that predates creation. And possibly there's dialects of that tongue. But originally, the one in the Quran, the original one, was a sort of like connection for everything. People spoke the Arabic language. And this is what the Quran is revealed in. It's something that the root infers, gives you extra understanding. It's like if I wanted to convey something in the best understanding, this is what the word araba refers to. I think I mentioned this in a video or live stream. So when Allah says we have conveyed it as an Arabic Qur'an, really what he's saying is we've conveyed it as a Qur'an that enhances your understanding, because that's literally what Arabic means. It's something to make things simpler. And you can find videos like, let me show you, let me do another channel recommendation. So this is a very interesting video. And may Allah exalt this this man. He showed how the Quran is revealed in Arabic because the Arabic language is immensely compressed information. One of the reasons why. If you were to take one surah and put it in Japanese or English, it would fill a page. It just wouldn't work as easily. Where you could just take little tiny, like for example, it's one of the main reasons, but the verses are explained in detail without being excessive, because this is how the Arabic language works. So it's a very interesting video to check out for sure. So you go back to mantiqa. Mantiqa. This is known throughout history as the conference of the birds. So it's taken directly from the Quran, Suleiman and Dawood's realm, their dominion. Again, I just told you lughat is the word for language today, as we understand it. And then lisan is the word for tongue, because lisan and Arabiyan is something that just rolls off the tongue. It's part of how you speak. All of the characters in the Quran speak this tongue, in an tongue Arabiyan. So what's interesting is this is an event in the Quran that has become almost legendary in a sense. And there is some kind of a conference of the birds, which they call mantiq. And I'm inclined to believe this is a good translation of it, more than language or tongue, because antaqa clearly is related to the word, to talk. In English, talk, antaqa, right? But not in the sense that just saying vain words, but mainly in the sense of a discussion like we're having right now, where there's a discourse, there's a logic, and there is a kind of more formal way of talking, right? So when I get to, where is it? I think it's yantiquna, right? This word they put as speak, but that's a problem because we already have the word qul as speak, qawl as speech, right? Mantiqa is almost like related to a position of the birds. And that's why it's interesting that it's also known in history, in even poetry, as well as maqamat at-tayr. It's the station, the scales. Maqam means like a musical scale, right? If you go into here. Melodic modes in traditional Arabic, Persian, Turkish, Uyghur, Azerbaijani, Tajiki, Uzbeki music. And of course, it's a place of honor, when somebody is elevated after death when it comes to a maqam. This is why they call it a shrine. But really, it's a station. And a station, if you think about it, I was talking about this just the other day, is always elevated in the Quran, right? But what they try to hide from you is that this is used in the context of music, maqam. This is what the Arabic Quran is recited in. They have maqamat. So tell me, how can you have the Quran recited in musical scales? Okay. But apparently we're not allowed to use this in Islam. Maqamat first appeared when the reciting of the Quran started. Okay. So what's very interesting is we have 7 heavens and we have 7 unique tones of a musical scale. It repeats once you get to an octave or the 8th tone. So much of our world is related around vibration. Does this mean speaking? لا ينطقون. He does not speak from his inclination. This is regarding the Prophet Muhammad, and this is really the evidence they use that hadith is a revelation. But let's just say it's related to some kind of a organized chanting, vocal, rhythmic speech that can be performed vocally. And think about it, okay? So it says your companion has not strayed nor erred. Ghaween are the people that are the followers of Iblis, okay? And he does not yantiqu from al-hawa, what they translate as desires or vanities, okay? It is not except wahyun, yuha. This is a transmission. Frequencies are transmitted in the Quran. It's not simply revelation. It's like, this is like something that finds you. Allah revealed, He transmitted, He awhayna toward the Prophet. So it's always directional, right? He taught by him shadidun quwa dhul mirratin fa istawa. So of course that he does not yantiqu except its revelation. If this meant just speech, Allah could have easily said He doesn't accept speak or read or anything. And think about the implications of that, that the Prophet Muhammad is basically anything he says apparently is truth from the heavens. That deifies the person, and it makes their life pretty much impossible, because every time they open their mouth to say something, apparently that's revelation according to Sunnis. No. It is something that is yantiqu. Okay? It is an eloquence that comes from the Prophet. That is what Allah calls a transmission from the Lord. Ibrahim talks this way about these statues, these likenesses that people worshipped, whatever they were. They don't yantiquna. And his people perfectly understand this, okay? So the kitab, yantiqu. So with Allah is a kitab, okay, between his hands is a kitab which yantiqu bil haqq, by the truth. Is the book speaking, or is something reverberating off of it? You know what I mean? So the speech waqa' will occur upon them for what they did of wrong, and they will not yantiqun. The more you look at this, you find that basically the skins of lijuludihim, of mankind, actually testify. How could they testify? Well, they tell you Allah made everything antaqana. He made everything do this. Clearly, there's something very special about the mantiqa at-tayr. All right. So if we go into mantiqa, literally what it means, it's a manner of diction, enunciation, eloquence, something that logically fits together. Okay. A mindset, dialectic. Then we get into mintaqa. Mintaqa is a place. Very interesting. It would appear that things have been kind of lost in this knowledge, and it's almost like you go to a place that you really like, and you'd say in Arabic, "Oh, هذا منطقة خير." This is a good place. This is a nice region of the nation or the land. It's like this place gives you good vibes, you know. Like we still talk this way, and this is related. Like, how could language be related to a region of the world unless there is something embedded in the creation regarding this concept of antaqa? And we go all the way to what the actual verb form word means, and it means to articulate, articulations. This is something that we have all the time in music. They're literally called articulations, notations. I'm not saying that this is what it is, but clearly, Allah says, recite or read the Qur'an rattil tartilan. And you know how they translate that? They translate that as measured recitation. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. Measured rhythmic recitation. Huh. Almost like how music is divided into measures. We study music, it's called bars or measures. What's going on here? Why did they ban music in Sunni Islam? There's nothing to suggest there's any mention of it being banned. They use this word lahwul hadith to justify, oh, this is the distraction of speech or something. That means music. No, it doesn't at all. In fact, it very much means the hadith they used to make all these fake claims, right? And when even right now, just outside my door, I can hear the birds engaging in song. In fact, that reminds me, bird song. Where did you come up with your name? You know what I mean? Bird song. That's what we understand birds to have. A song. A song is part of a rhythmic articulation from the vocal cords of these animals and from all animals. So clearly, if you understand the world to be organized according to vibrations, the seven heavens, the seven gates of hell, everything, it makes so much sense. In fact, sound precedes the creation. Allah says, kun, and it is. The word for universe or cosmos in Arabic is kaun. Kind of related to the word cone, as if there's a top-down authority. But also the fact that it comes from this kun, be. This actual word allowed for all this to exist. Birdsong, you caught on to what I was getting at. There is an episode from the popular show Game of Thrones titled Spoils of War. Spoils of War, in that episode, that verse is exactly what you see. I can't show you really because I don't want to get copyright strike. But just search that episode. Maybe I can find it. Maybe I can find a picture of it, okay? This is the first time in this series the dragon is big enough and finally meets the enemies on the battlefield. Think about it. And she's being ridden by a person. And funny enough, Birdsong, they call this person, okay, who's from a bloodline, who's freeing the slaves, the breaker of chains in the show. You know what they call her in their language? Misa. They call her Misa, the breaker of chains, you know what I mean? Just like Musa. They just did a little fast one on us there. Musa fought in wars. In the Quran, he fought in wars. He was a major power against the major powers of the day. That's the thing. They take the stories from the Quran and repackage them, change all the specific details of it, and then they sell it to us as an original story. Okay? Salam alaikum, Dale. Welcome to the stream. This is a very fun stream. Yeah, ancient Hamadan discipline. It's not simply killing people that disagree with your side. That's actually what Allah calls his enemies. Why? Because the messengers that are persecuted along with their followers throughout the dunya, even to this day, they are forced and compelled to follow something that's wrong. But the messengers never force anybody. They just remind them, hey, this is wrong. Follow one God, one Lord who created you and everything. And by the way, ancient Hamadan discipline, the Creator talks about war because if you understood what is actually going on under our noses for a long time, especially in the Prophet's times, but even now, you'd probably have nothing other to do other than to fight these people. Because think about it. If you allow evil to persist, what's going to happen? It doesn't understand. These evildoers in the world, they don't understand any language other than violence, other than power, I should say. And that's not at all, like condoning anything, because in the Quran we see perfectly clearly that the mode of warfare by the Muslims is very advanced. It has nothing to do with what you're taught about these desert tribes fighting each other over camels. It's incredibly advanced. It has sophisticated artillery, cavalry, all kinds of means at their disposal. And the Prophet Muhammad, he's described as modest and shy. He's described as the best of character. The mode of warfare in the Quran is defensive. There is no exceeding limits. The ones that attack you are liable for fighting. So, yeah. Taking life is never a requirement. It's not a requirement. It's part of the context of our world. I mean, you have to think about it. Like, somebody comes to threaten your family's life, you're not going to sit there and watch. So, Salam Farouk Ahmed. It's not schizophrenia, it's there's morality, objective good and evil in the world. If you don't believe in good and evil, then you can literally condone anything. If you believe something is wrong, you already concede that good and evil exist. And if good and evil exist, then are you just going to sit there and let evil persist? No. Welcome Haji Amdar to the stream. It does come in warfare. I mean, ancient Hamadan discipline, I don't know what scripture you're reading, but one of the punishments on Bani Israel, as well as the people at the Prophet's time, called hypocrites, is basically they were called to fight in the name of Allah, in the cause of God, and they didn't. They didn't fight. That was their punishment. They were cowardly. And Allah actually uses his forces to keep evil in check. If we did not keep people in check this way, tyranny would just completely obliterate the earth. That's mentioned in the scripture. Welcome, Makalin Kali. Salam. ARMBV, same way, because in the Quran, you don't have Bedouins. You have Al-A'rab. So is this Arabs? Why not call them Arabs? Why did they insist to put Bedouins there? What is a Bedouin? Let's just look at it. I know I'm getting sidetracked, but I'll come to it again. What is the definition of a Bedouin? A nomadic Arab. A nomadic Arab. So why do they have to be nomadic, split into tribes, herding goats, camels, and sheep? Is it maybe because there was an expulsion that occurred from their land? So now they're just scattered, like Beni Israel, they're scattered from their homeland, in exile. They're not a particular race of people, they're just a particular language group. And you can demonstrate all the languages come from Arabic. Yeah, I kind of discussed my point there, ancient Hamadan discipline. You can check for yourself. I'm not claiming things from my own words. It's in the Quran. Fight. There is no pacifism when it comes to confronting the corruption spread in the earth. None at all. In fact, the messengers were sent to convey that message. It's not a human deduction based on survival. No verse says Beni Israel were commanded to war. Okay. No problem. Maybe that will kind of put your mind at ease. Fight fi sabilillah alladhina yuqatilunakum. Those who fight you, but do not transgress. Allah does not like the transgressors. That's in the second chapter. That's general. Okay. Then you have chapter 5. Is it 4? Chapter 4. Let me find it. It's a command. So when you go to this verse, okay? This is chapter 4, verse 23, was it? No, it's earlier than that. And obviously, Beni Israel are justified in a sense because the task is very difficult for them. So, Musa said to his people, O people, remember Allah's favor upon you when He placed in you all prophets and anbiya, and made you kings and gave you, He hasn't given anyone from the worlds. O people, enter the holy earth, the one written by Allah for you. Why would it mention victory and overcoming? Why would they talk about this people of giants or whatever, Jabbareen, that they didn't want to fight? It's clearly a war. They didn't want to fight. Anyway, you get the idea. This is from Allah's words, not mine. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, salam work ethics. Why do you have this red bird on the thumbnail? Well, that's the next idea. So one of the birds in this story is this one, and it's called Al-Hudhud. Al-Hudhud has been demonstrated to us to be the hoopoe. I think that's how you pronounce it. Very peculiar looking bird, has a crest, kind of a reddish, orangish tint to it, with stripes. And it's a widespread distribution, like Africa, Asian species, European species. And this is the messenger that is sent to Suleiman. I'm going to show you right here. So Suleiman had an army, and this army consisted of basically soldiers, right? From jinns, from humans, and from these birds. Even in Lord of the Rings, they show you there's an army of eagles, right? And so basically they come upon this valley of ants. It's anyone's guess what that implies, the ants. But what's interesting is he is, inspecting, or he's looking after his assembly of the birds, specific ones, right? And he doesn't see this particular one called the hoopoe, al-hudhuda. Okay. Then she comes to him and she tells him some intelligence report on Saba. Saba was a civilization at the same time as Suleiman's empire. Okay. Binaba'in, information, news, certain news about Saba. So really, like, these birds are messengers. They convey a message that makes them very valuable. They're almost like sentient creatures unto themselves, akin to angels, right? But obviously, I don't think at this point there's anything to suggest they're tested or anything. Okay. We have this story as well, all the way back to Ibrahim, it seems. So Ibrahim asks his Lord for a sign, and Allah tells him, take 4 from the birds. So we have a number association as well, just like the 4 directions, just like if you just see where this word arba is used. It will kind of point to the fact that there's something very significant about that number. Then, ij'al ala kulli jabalin, mountains, a portion of them. Then call them, they will come to you in haste. Notice there is no slaughtering at all. That's something they added from the Bible. But this hudhud bird is very likely, it's even in Chinese, Japanese, called ho ho, a repeated term. Very likely what you would call the phoenix. Now, think about it this way, right? This is a creature that has this definite article. Okay, this is the only time it's mentioned, and so I would imagine that it's something very significant, especially when it's literally communicating with Suleiman intelligibly, right? Mantiqa is intelligible discourse. And there's many names for this creature. It has the same basic shape everywhere. These are legendary creatures that have existed somewhere in our history, and the Quran is alluding to that. When you go to Persia, they call it the simurgh. And it's always seen as a benevolent bird as well. I talked about in part 5 how there are birds that are nesting above where the tree of life is, in the branches. And they're constantly in some kind of a battle with the kind of serpentine, chthonic creatures of the underworld, like dragons. So it's just all over history, all over our mythology, the thing the Quran actually points to as having a lot of truth to it in our time. When the messengers came with proofs, they denied them and they said, these are just asatir min al-awwalin. These are just stories. These are just legends of the former peoples. Really, they're legends. So interestingly enough, the bird represents resurrection, paradise, the Maryam, even Isa, the Christ as well. And funny enough, it's related to something phoinikos, which may mean palm tree. I showed how palm trees are related to this story with Maryam and Isa, the trunk of the palm tree, and how very likely this tree, I'll have to do another stream on that, is not a palm, because palm trees do not have branches, they do not have trunks, they're not actually trees to begin with, they're a type of grass. So interesting that this creature is alluded to in Greek mythology, phoinikos, as being related to a vast palm. So in Sufi poetry, it's mentioned frequently as a metaphor for God. So these creatures are literally signs of Allah, and I'm going to show you with some of them that Allah actually, He uses them in the same way that He would talk about Himself, in a sense, just like the angels. The angels are vehicles of His will. These creatures are a similar type of creation. They work as messengers, vehicles of His will. Okay. In the 12th century Conference of the Birds, it was written about a band of pilgrim birds, pilgrims, like from Mecca, in search of the samurgh. Look at this. The Ho'opo'o, the wisest of them all, suggests that they should find the legendary samurgh, a mythical Persian bird roughly equivalent to the western phoenix. So we see this association already. And if you want an idea where they live, it's already mentioned before in the Mecca series that Mount Qaf, the mountains of Qaf, are where a lot of these creatures are. The extremities we cannot access anymore. We have also mention of Huma bird as well. And by the way, I didn't come to this except accidentally, supposedly, that all of these creatures, I mean, in Ottoman poetry, it's a bird of paradise. And that seems to be where they nest, actually. They seem to, maybe I'll talk about this in part 6, but birds migrate south for the winter. And in Finnish mythology, they seem to suggest there is a paradisical realm near the dome where they rest. A lot of them, the major ones. This creature can fly its entire life. Some say has no legs, kind of like a feathered serpent or something. It's all over the insignia today. Okay, and again, because we've lost access to these creatures, we've associated them with things that we see around us, right? So let's say today we call the hudhud a ho'opo'a, right? But what did we call it back then? Is that only because we've been dissociated from the old world? And so we just had to find maybe somebody found it for us, some kind of a counterpart, some likeness or semblance of it, right? That seems to be what's going on. In Chinese mythology, it's very prominent as the phoenix called Fang Huang. And they even have the Byzantine crest here. This is called the 12 symbols of China. It even has this tree that branches out, kind of spikes, 7 spikes that are mentioned in the Quran. And what's very interesting is that it's in association with a dragon or some kind of serpent as well. You can find the Byzantine crest, right? Where is it? This one. They're put as betas, right? But if you look at, in Serbia, they have this bird, and then they have these C's, okay? But they're B's, betas. It's just exactly the same as this. Same configuration. Anyway, not to get too sidetracked, Egyptian mythology has the same thing. Egyptian mythology is actually very, very much referenced in the Quran, especially when you get to topics about Uzair and how a man that Bani Israel had killed is brought back to life. The Yahud call Uzair son of Allah, right? Allah's son. So, yeah, it's just ambiguous now because we don't have a concept anymore. And in Hebrew, it's called khul. And some translations of the Bible use this word as phoenix, such as the King James, right? But they hid it as sand, right? In the King James and the Luther Bible. But he used to use the word phoenix for this bird. If you go to this verse, right? Job 29:18. Where is it? I prefer it in English. Let's see, King James Version. Then I said, I shall die in my chest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. That's what they translated there. And funny enough, it has this. Let me see here. Yeah. So yeah. That's that. Then we'll move on to this. I just want to go back to the chat. Let me see. Salam alaikum, Ibu. Good early morning. Oh yeah, Salam, when will you explain the mechanisms? How exactly did ancient Semitic peoples travel to the North Pole, given that it's extremely cold and incredibly hard to reach? We need substance. Look, V, thank you for the question. The assumption is that the people are from the Middle East. That's not where they're from. In fact, there's nothing to suggest the people living in the Middle East right now, much the same all other countries, are not from there. Okay? They were found there speaking this Arabic language. So if you take out that assumption, then you'll understand how it's possible. They're not from the Semitic lands. Clearly a people live there, but we don't know. Yeah, the Pokemons are kind of an interesting way, like the Pokemons are kind of interesting way that they have attracted kids, young people, even myself when I was a kid. Like you're gonna find that really the major things that they put out in the open is in kids media, children's media, whether it's books or stories or movies or shows or music. It's in the kids media, because the children are the closest to their fitra. So they're going to see that as, yep, that makes sense. Yep, the earth is like this, and there's castles in the sky, and there's all kinds of things, right? It is nonsense, but the nonsense is always based on something. Like in the Quran, we have the idea that the truth is dressed in falsehood. So you just lift the layers of the falsehood, and you're gonna find the truth. Hope you guys are enjoying the stream. Apologies, ancient Hamadan discipline. I showed you the verses that say fight. That's from the scripture. I would like to live in a world where everything was a utopia, but this is one of the great tests Allah tests the believers, particularly men. And salam, maybe we have a difference of opinion on that. Sorry to inject my interpretation when I'm showing you the word for fighting. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's part of the deception, right? They put that openly there as make believe. So you grew up your whole life saying, "Oh, that's all fake," right? Why do they engage in these rituals, right? Clearly, we have animals that talk or communicate in some way in the Quran. That has to be explained. So when a child watches that in a show or a movie, to them it makes perfect sense because they're still not detached from their fitra. They say, yeah, everything is alive. Everything is true, right? Everything is sentient in a sense. You'll find children greet inanimate like plants. Thank you, Birdsong, for the hudhud and hadid. I think that's an interesting concept there. It creates a bright red-orange flame, iron. Iron being contrasted with copper, which is a green flame. They are part of the aurora, and basically on the color spectrum, they're complementary, right? Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the kalb. You guys will find this interesting. So we have this creature called the kalb in the Quran, and this to this day means dog. No question. But clearly Allah is talking about al-kalb. So I'm going to show you the most times it's mentioned in the Quran is actually in chapter 18 with the companions of the cave. And I made some videos regarding the companions of the cave. It's completely different to what we're told. However, what about the dog? That's clearly a associate of theirs, right? I'm going to show you something to suggest that we haven't been told the full story of what's going on. Okay. Yeah. So one verse, this dog is mentioned 3 times. So let's go piece by piece, and I'll show you what I think this could be referring to, given that Allah makes reference of al-kalb, and this al-kalb is alluded to in the story of the companions of the cave. Okay. So, number 1. This is their translation. I'm just showing you what we are taught about this, right? And if we had willed, we could have elevated him thereby, but he adhered to the earth and followed his own desire. So his example is like that of the dog. If you chase him, he pants, and if you leave him, he pants. That is the example of the people who denied our signs. So relate the stories that perhaps they will give thought. I'll show you a couple of problems with this, okay? So we could have raised him, okay, like a physical raising in rank, what have you. This is a person that was guided and then he disjointed or rejected the guidance, okay? Akhlada, to make immortal. Why would he do that? Akhladahu. He thinks that his wealth will make him immortal. You get an idea of what this immortality is about, how he strayed from the path. And he followed his vain desires. And so the example is like the example of the dog. If you tahmil alayhi, what does this mean? You attack upon him? Nope, doesn't mean that. It means if you ride him. Okay? Tahmil, hamalat is something involves carrying. Have you ever seen a dog being ridden before? Probably not. Maybe it's a very big dog. But I'm going to show you that this is clearly something that has been lost from our knowledge because of what's happened in our history. We're in collective amnesia. Okay? Mounts. These are all mounts. And it's also used for pregnancy because the child is carried by the mother. But in this case, tahmil is bearing. If you are carried upon it, the dog, the kalb. يلهث أو تتركه. يلهث. We don't have any idea what this means. This remains to be determined. But they have inserted this to give you the idea, the impression that it's a dog. Okay. تتركه. تتركه, left, leaving. Leave behind. It's like something that's left behind for inheritance. Taraka, they left behind this for someone else to inherit. This is a valuable commodity, whatever this kalb is, right? That's the example of the people who denied by our signs. Relate the story that they might reflect. This is something Allah wants you to think about, okay? That's the first example. You have something you ride on, okay? That's what Allah calls al-kalb. Here's the other thing too. This is a verse. It's been just very misinterpreted. I'm going to have to talk about this at some point. They will say, not they say, they will say. This is present tense, future tense, okay? So this will probably still happen in the future. You'll find that the companions of the cave people are very much relevant to our world, okay? They will say there were 3, 4th of them was their kalbuhum. And they say there were 5, 6th of them was their kalb. Guessing by the unseen. And they say 7 and 8 of them was their kalb. They say this currently. They say there were 7 sleepers. And that's taken from Christian texts. Say, my Lord is best knowing about their number? No. About their waiting period. Number, as you can imagine, is adad. Adad. That's what number is. Idda is a period of time. That's numbered. It's a numbered period of time. So what they have done is basically they have turned this into number. This famous verse about 19. It says, we have not made the companions of the fire, ashab al-nar, except malaikatan, and we have not made their waiting period except a trial. This is not number. Waiting period. This has been grossly misunderstood. This is what, like, we talk about a number of days, a number of months, okay? You can find this easily. Allah knows best, and none knows them except a few. Okay, so it's possible to know. Okay, you just have to think, you have to reflect on this and use an obvious miraran. Okay, I mentioned this in my videos about Yusuf, companion of the cave. Anyway, do you know who is spoken about like this? There is an exact similar situation here. Let me find it. In this verse, you can see it's the only other mention, Rabi'uhum, fourth of them. Have you not considered Allah knows what is in the heavens and what is on the earth? There is no private conversation. 3, but that He is the fourth of them. Nor are there 5, but that He is the sixth of them. No less than that and no more except that He is with them, wherever they are. Interesting how Kalb is substituted with Allah in this verse. Exactly the same type of language. And instead of them, the companions, it's talking about private conversation. Okay? Now, clearly, a dog doesn't befit the sublimeness of Allah. Perhaps this is why they use the word God, which is dog backwards. I don't condone that whatsoever, but that's what they call the deity Allah, or any deity to this day. So that got me thinking, well, clearly something is going on here. They've kind of hidden things from us and obscured things to make us think differently. Let's go to the other occurrences, okay? Let me know if you guys are with me. Yeah. Yeah, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, they go to the cave and have to go past the giant three-headed dog that is asleep. Very good. So now you see what's going on. But I'm going to show you guys that there is something going on with this creature. That they can travel, these companions can travel so quickly with it. Okay? Not sure exactly, can't say a definite, but it's a possibility, it's a theory. And by the way, that three-headed dog is called Cerberus, and it's massive, and it actually is guarding the entrance to hell, the entrance to the underworld. Yeah, ancient Hamilton discipline, like, you can't to make claims like that out of emotions that I somehow desire murder. Lugha translations, I mean, okay, no problem. Hope you're enjoying the stream, by the way. Sorry to offend you. Yeah, so anyway, let me show you guys this, okay? This is something that's been completely overlooked. Let me see if I can find it. So, mukallibin. They ask you, what has been made lawful for them? Say, lawful for you are all good foods and what you have trained of hunting animals which you train as Allah has taught you. So eat of what they catch for you, and mention the name of Allah upon it, and fear Allah. Indeed, Allah is swift in account. You're going to see that something here that they have hidden. Al-jawarihi. What are jawarihi? If you go to the root, okay, wounding. Wounding. I'm going to show you that this is wounding by a creature that has very sharp implements. And we use these creatures for hunting today. Of course, a dog has very sharp teeth as well. But this is particular to a type of creature that can fly. Mukallibin literally means those who train animals to hunt. So clearly we have an idea that kalb represents, in and of itself, a hunting animal. That's what kalb refers to. Animals domesticated for hunting. Yeah, sorry, Hamilton Discipline. The reason I said that is because that word is translated that's defined that way in the Quran. And those lugha dictionaries, those are seen in light of the Quran, like everything else. Of course, they have fake definitions there. No one's discounting that. But clearly, the Quran defines things for you. It acts as its own dictionary. So you use how that dictionary is used with what's available today. You make those reconciliations. Okay, this is why Allah tells us to reflect. V, I'm getting to it. Okay, I don't think it's Cerberus, because Cerberus is a creature that's not trained to hunt. It's trained to guard. But nonetheless, they have made it a dog anyway. Do you have any idea why do we need to know all of this instead of just heedlessly live like a normal person? Like, when are we going to use this knowledge? Well, you see, the hour has all the events come to its climax. So Allah tells us the hour is near, very near. And we have to make it a make it a habit to always have the hour in mind. So yeah, if you're still with me, V, and people in the chat, I'm going to show you the verse that really I couldn't explain that to be a dog. So kalb, hunting animal. Kalb, something you mount. Kalb creates wounds. Jawarih. Juruh are wounds. Okay. Kalb is something that Allah compares with his presence to messengers, to people. Okay. It is something with the companions of the cave. So now we get to the real one. You would think them, take this with a grain of salt, okay? But what they show you is you would think them awake while they were asleep, right? And then it says, their كلبهم باسط ذراعيه بالوسيط. This is very interesting. This word, as you can imagine, it does not mean 4 legs. Why? Because it's used in the Quran. Like I'm showing you, things are defined how they're used by the Quran first. Then you look into what is apparent, what Allah has distributed of His signs around the Quran to make that connection. Do you see how this is put as cubits? And this is exactly how you can find this translated cubits. I mentioned this earlier, so I can have this segue. 70 cubits. How much is a cubit? And by the way, this is 2 cubits, right? So this animal, this creature called a kalb, stretched out 2 cubits. Why 2? Well, You're going to see why it stretched them out. Okay. How long is a cubit? Whoops. So basically what we have here, let me see. Let me find it here. There's a bit of discrepancy when it comes to how they're measured. But when I was looking at this months ago, I remember that basically you're talking about like something really large. Okay. And the fact that there's two of them being outstretched, to me, it's like the angels extend, right? Are these wings? Do these things have claws? Is that why if you looked at them, you'd be terrified? You would surely turn back in flight? Okay. Because it includes this animal with the companions, right? Well, funny enough, when you look at this, Keleba originally meant a dog or a falcon, connected especially to canine teeth or claws, connected to pierce as well as the conception of hunting or catching food, a tool or aid in acquiring food. Kelbta in Aramaic, tongs, pincers, holding on to something. Hooks, fish hooks, grapples, flesh hook, bill hook, clamp, talons, especially of a falcon, thorns. None of these things describe really accurately that much a dog or the jaw of a dog. It describes claws. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a break. Hope you guys are enjoying the stream. Okay. One sec, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, one sec. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Almost at the 2-hour mark. So let me just see here. Now, let's see. Okay. The Caleb, right? Now, oh, welcome. Salam, Anti-Gogol. Salam, Ibu. Salam, Wahshi. All right. So, this is what we see from Caleb. Something with talons, a fish hook, some kind of a flesh hook, grappling, bill hook, pruning hook, a clamp, spur, talons, especially of a falcon. You guys, jawariha is related to wounding. It's something you can ride in the Quran that carries you, basically. It's something that is outspreading its 2 cubits. Okay. Let me just see here. We have this idea, this concept that the predatory birds or raptors, in fact, jawarih relates to raptors. So raptors are hunting animals. That's what jawarih means. So why is that used in this verse regarding a dog? Mukallibin, the trainers of dogs, the trainers of hounds, trainers of hunting animals. Jawarihi, those are falcons. Those are predatory flying animals. And this is still in practice today. But let's say once upon a time, we didn't need to have the combination of a land creature and a flying creature, like you see here. Instead, we had this. Okay. We had a creature that flies and walks like a dog as well, and has talons and has a beak and is large enough to ride, and it's been talked about since the dawn of time. You ever wonder about the whole Tartaria flag? Clearly, in the past, we had better versions of the traditions we have today that have been lost. If you look into any alternate history, you'll see that this animal is everywhere. The griffin. And even talks about the idea of like Rome and stuff. I mean, this is an official atlas, apparently. Some kind of a mythical creature. Now, I'm not saying that this is actually has any weight to it, but it's something of a hypothesis based on how the word kaleb is used in the Quran. The word gripos means curved or hooked, like a beak, like talons. Lion, eagle, shirdad in Persian, meaning, you know, when we come to this, we can see why this insignia is everywhere. Some kind of a lion, some kind of an eagle that was basically, it became split at some point. But the symbolism persists to this day. Why do we see this over and over and over again? The most famous example being these people called Scythians. And they have such details, intimate details about these things that they guard treasure, that they are they can be domesticated, that they live in the north, Hyperborea. That's where they're from. They nest there, the northern creatures. And they protect gold and treasures, which Allah tells us in the story in chapter 18. There is a treasure underneath a wall. And it's just so interesting that we have this phenomenon all over the place. Probably the most enigmatic, prolific creature of the medieval and ancient times. And there's no explanation. Apparently, we have never uncovered any archaeological discoveries regarding it. Just something to think about. Sure, it walks exactly like a dog, but it's big enough to ride, has wings. It fits a description that really, I mean, the creator of the heavens and the earth would be aware of if it actually does exist. We even have mention of this in other scriptures as Ziz. Ziz. So look at this. We have the Hut, okay, this Leviathan, whale-like, serpent, dragon-like creature of immense proportions. That was discussed in the last live stream. Now we have this kalab, this kind of like griffin-type creature. Like, think about the word garapa, kalaba, garapa, kalaba. The people that have messed around with languages have made us lose all the sounds in the languages we speak all the time now, that exist only completely in Arabic tongues today. And then we have this giant creature, this giant bull-like quadruped creature, which they call behemoth. And this is referenced in the Qur'an. A similar word is in there as well. So obviously, because we have lost connection to our past, all of this stuff seems very clouded in doubt and very fantasy and very out there. But keep in mind, guys, they consider the Quran mythology. They actually consider that today academically. No one will tell you the Quran is Allah's word academically. It's not allowed. As soon as you make that leap, then everything falls into place. In Hinduism, it serves as a mount of the god Vishnu. Something you mount. It's literally all over the place. Okay? And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to uncover, you know? So you have to think about all this stuff all together, not in isolation. Okay? So that brings us to another animal. You probably have got a spoiler of it, but we have so many accounts of this. It's just as prolific as dragons or ravens or phoenixes, what have you. And I just want to broaden the understanding just a little bit. Why is this everywhere? This is like the creature of Beni Israel. It's all over the tapestries. It's everywhere. Is this just symbolism? Or do they know something we don't know? They know something. Okay? And I'm just putting it forward out there. I can't say any authoritative understanding whatsoever, but clearly we do need an alternative that fits the description. This article is longer than some things that are known today. As if like there's so much information about something that's fake. It's like with the Chinese horoscope. Everybody knows of the lunar calendar in China. But guess what? There's only one animal that's fake, apparently, and the other 11 are real. Really. So there's all kinds of versions, probably different species, some with wings, some without wings. The whole point is they are trainable animals and often seen as a symbol of the divine, the symbol of the creator. Perhaps they have hidden them in some of these creatures. We don't know. Anyway, if we move on, we have this idea of a himar. And everybody will tell you al-himar is a donkey. Hamir, humrun are donkeys. But then we have this one thing in the root, hamra, humrun, which means redness, something that's red. What's very interesting is the roots point out the overarching concepts, how they're connected. That's the amazing thing about Arabic. Haram, haram, that's associated with Masjid al-Haram, a sanctuary. Haram. Raham, associated with Rahman, Rahim, Rahma, mercy, merciful, benevolent. Just switching around the letters of the root. And then you have Hamra. Hamara, that's redness, something red. So, what does a donkey have to do with redness? Apparently nothing. What we're going to see is al-himar is something very profound because Allah likens those who carry the Torah, not entrusted, carry the Torah. Okay? Then they did not carry it. The example of, and Allah is using examples that are real, right? You use a metaphor for something that's real, you know? Like somebody has a heart of gold. Gold is not a fake thing, it's a real thing. The himar yahmilu asfaran. And if you guys think that there was no Hebraic corruption of the translations of the Quran, this word does not mean books. It means journeys. Asfar, safari. This is where we get the word safari from. A journey, an adventure. Asfaran are not books, that's kutub. Sefer is book in Hebrew. So clearly somebody is trying to obfuscate again. This himar carries journeys. It's a traveling creature for travel. Then we have a story about a person passed upon a city and it was overturned upon its urushiha, roofs. Funny enough, they put this as roofs. Everywhere else it says throne, throne, throne. Trellis. Roofs, though, erection, construction, something that is built high. Okay. So Allah brings this man to life after he died. 100 years. Mi'at a'amin. Then Allah dispatched him. He said, how long have you remained? He says, I remained a day or part of a day. He says, no, you remained 100 am. And look at your food and your drink. They did not change. Interesting, that kind of tells you about paradise in a sense, right? Because the drinks of paradise from those springs, they do not change in time or flavor. And look at your himar, donkey. We will make you a sign for the people. And look at the elan. These are not the bones of the donkey. Okay, the donkey is somewhere else. If you want an idea who this is talking about, who is the only person in the Quran that's called ayatan linnas? There's only one person. Yeah. Interesting, Rocky Balboa. Gripian. Doesn't that relate to grip? You put something in a grip, its talons. Interesting. Something that grips. Yeah, I hope you guys are. Yeah, it means German to grasp. Interesting. Yeah, calm down in the chat, guys. It doesn't. Everyone's gonna have different opinions, no problem. I welcome all kinds of viewpoints for sure. It's a discussion at the end of the day. All right, let's go back. Maybe it's time for me to get some moderators. I don't know. We'll see. So, one of the other things. So, if you don't know who's mentioned as a ayatan linnas, it's literally Isa. Isa is the only one. Let me show you. It's somewhere. Here it is. He said, "It will be, your Lord says it, easy for me, and we will make him a sign to the people and a mercy from us. It is a matter already decreed." Okay. Isa. Funny enough, they tell you that Jesus rides on a donkey called the Messiah's donkey. Okay. So, why do we have Jesus ride a donkey into Jerusalem? It's almost like they're trying to tell us that these messianic figures, these prophets, were on these types of animals. What comes to mind is in Egypt, we have some kind of a set creature. Nobody can figure out what this animal is or what it means, but at the very least, it's big enough to ride and it has very long ears. In fact, they make sure to make a comparison as a donkey. Okay. Nobody can actually figure out what it is. They liken it to a dog, of course. But what's very interesting is this animal is often depicted as red, which would make sense because the root comes from hamara. And if you want a further confirmation, right? Let me show you. So hamir are used for riding, okay? And then they have this ayah. وَاقْصِدْ فِي مَشِيكَ وَأَغْضُضْ من صوتك إن أنكر الأصوات لصوت الحمير. The most disagreeable or harshest of sounds is the sound of the donkeys. How does that make sense? Clearly there's something in our history that this referred to. Because as obnoxious as a donkey's braying sounds, it's not the worst of all the sounds you could possibly think of. Okay? So clearly there's a reason why Allah is talking this way. He's pointing to something to give you evidence to research and confirm with the Qur'an. It is the Furqan after all. So it's interesting, like we have this in Egypt. It seems like Egypt has a lot of evidence for so much. We have the idea of Set and Horus. And one of them has this kind of griffin kind of, they're anthropomorphized, right? But one of them has this kind of donkey-like appearance. The other one has a more griffin-like appearance. And it's just interesting to me, like, we have this kind of East versus West rivalry, and I don't know what to make of these stories in and of themselves, but clearly there's something from our past that we need to uncover, to understand, so in the future we're not as surprised when things get really crazy really fast. The hour before the day of judgment is something incredibly important. Then you have this story, and this is again with Musa. Musa has so much information. If you can figure out Musa's life, you can figure out a lot from the Quran. So it says he threw his staff, and suddenly she was a thu'ban mubin. This word evident is kind of interesting because we know that his staff turns into something that's like a jinn. It's like a creature from the jinn world. It's like that. And it wriggles and slithers around like that. And then in the third account of the same story, when Allah is training Musa to face Fir'aun, he tells him that it's a snake. We were informed it's a hayy, a snake. But it's interesting that this word also means snake or serpent when they're two totally different words. This word thu'ban we still use today in astronomy. I'm going to show you where we use that. Just checking into the chat. Yeah, it's basically we see a lot of the kind of Christian ideas from Egyptian mythology. It would appear that the Yahud very much, their religion was preserved, whatever Yahud means in the past, this Egyptian pharaonic religion in Christianity, mainstream Western Christianity. However, the Nasara are the counterpart to that, and I'm going to make some more videos on that to show you guys. Yeah, very likely the deities are jinn themselves. I'm just showing you the likenesses. Why do they depict them this particular way? With a donkey's head and a bird's head. It sounds a bit kind of suspicious, right? And you think about it, right? Think about it also. We have Fir'aun has his own gods in the Quran. We know that these gods are jinns. They just call upon these spirits. That's the idols that they call upon. And the council of Fir'aun, Pharaoh, they tell him, will you allow this person to abandon your gods? They're talking to Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the one who's the god of the people. He's the one that's worshipped. And what's interesting is when you look at Fir'aun, he believes in his own gods. There's even like films, documentaries where they talk about the story of Moses from the Bible, and they'll even show like he will try to pray to his gods, call upon his gods, Pharaoh, and what's interesting is those gods are like these deities, and they actually speak back to him. They whisper to him. That's a whole other thing, that basically a lot of these statues in the Quran have some sentience, but they cannot bring any revelation, any kind of anything truthful. Yeah, you know, Birdsong, what's interesting, Uzair appears to be a person. Like Azar and Uzair, they're people. They could even be brothers. However, they have deified these people after they're long and gone. And what they're calling upon when they look for guidance from, let's say, a Christian, he says, "Oh, Jesus Christ, help me. I pray to Jesus," right? Or a Shia will say, "Oh, Ali, help me, Ali." Or a Sunni will say, "Oh, Muhammad, help me, oh, Muhammad." those people, whether they're righteous or not, they tend to be righteous people. They don't respond. The ones that respond are devils. That's what I'm getting at. You can put any name in that category, birdsong, and they will actually not hear. Like, it's a joke to think that we can call upon these people from beyond the grave, except that the devils would respond. Shaitan says in the Quran, I didn't force you to do anything. You called me and I responded. So it's just interesting. Okay. Let's just move on. Thu'ban. This is the word that's a serpent. And this is only in the story where Musa shows the staff turn into this to Pharaoh. There's no like in this story. This is a direct cause and effect. So obviously it's a sign from Allah. It's a miracle. But Allah's signs are manifest. They're obvious, right? Mubin, evident. So what is a thu'ban? Imagine also Pharaoh and his elites. They have to say this is magic because that's all they understand. All they understand in that culture is not, theology. All they understand is trying to make illusions of the unseen. So when they show you like CGI cartoons about your cosmos, that's magic. That's illusions. Here, this is not magic because Allah is telling you this inanimate object literally became this creature. It's a bit spooky to think that this process is possible. This is what alchemy is centered around. That they're trying to find how to do this. But Allah is the only one who can grant permission to do this. So when Isa, he makes this bird, a semblance of one of the birds from a specific type of clay, it comes alive. This is insane, the amount that the messengers of Allah were able to accomplish in their lifetime. So interestingly, that this is related to Alpha Draconis. That's Latin for dragon, or Greek for dragon. Thu'ban. And obviously it means snake now, but the only problem is that hay also means snake. So this is something more specific, and they use this for the constellation Draco. The star in the constellation Draco is called Alpha Draconis. It's near the North Pole. They even say that Thu'ban, this very star that is named after this creature that turned from Musa's staff, was the Northern Pole star once upon a time. I can't confirm or deny that, but it's interesting. This is part of the north of the northern hemisphere. Now, interesting here, they tell you it means head of the serpent. That gives a totally different idea, because if it's the head of a serpent, we don't know what the body looks like. And I think I had showed you this before. Moses with the magicians, they illustrate this as dragons, okay? As you can see here. With limbs, with wings, some kind of draconic creature. Not merely a serpent like they tend to show you. Like it's just a cobra. Okay, fine. But clearly there's something more to the story, right? And perhaps in the time that Musa had put his snake in the travel mode, and let me show you what I mean by that. Hayyatun. That means snake, right? Now it says hiya hayyatun, traveling swiftly. Tas'a. And Allah tells him, okay, this big snake, this gigantic snake that scared Musa the first 2 times. And Allah says, come back, come back. The messengers do not fear in my presence. He says, do not fear, Musa. Take it. We will return it to its sirataha al-ula. What does that mean? Al-ula. The former condition. Sira is related to traveling. It's almost like the snake was changed into this creature. That's why there's no contradiction in the Quran. You have to find why it makes sense. And this was not enough to convince Pharaoh, except that it was a magic to him. Funny enough, in Ottoman Turkish, that's exactly what they call it. A fabulous serpent of enormous size, a dragon. Even this word tinnin, which comes from Hebrew apparently, this is the aquatic version of this, which the Quran you can easily call a hut, Leviathan. But this one seems to be the land-based version of it. At least that's from what I understand. Okay. All of these stars are named after Arabic names. At-Tannin, Thu'ban, in the north, near the North Pole. Yeah, this is another description of this donkey-headed Set creature, anthropomorphized, of course, for their gods, and this kind of falcon-like hunting creature, anthropomorphized as Horus. We have a donkey mentioned in Sunni hadith traditions. I want to mention this in the part 6 of Mecca. It's a bit of a preview, but this is mentioned in extra Quranic texts as buraq, some kind of a white donkey-like creature. And the reason it's white is because, the reason why they say it's like a donkey is because it's described as having long ears. I don't know if any of these pictures do it justice, obviously, but certainly they're evidence to look at. So the Prophet Muhammad is said to have made his night journey, this voyage with this creature. And what's interesting is he's not the only one. They tell us in hadith as well, other descriptions, right, that this thing carried Ibrahim as well. And it's known to be the vehicle from the natural world of the messengers. And funny enough, you look at this too, it's shown that it has this kind of serpentine-like tail or something like that. And it just reminds me so much of this creature. Let me see if I can find it. This kind of serpentine-like tail is always in these descriptions of this creature. So who knows? It's anyone's guess. Maybe it's still in its infancy of discovery, right? But anything mentioned in the Quran is significant. So clearly we have these creatures today still adorning all of the major insignia of the modern world, even to this day. Unicorns and dragons and all kinds of different things. And if this was all fake, then clearly, I don't know, you have to wonder why. Why do they need to put this in our view? and just not inform us of, what they mean. So that brings us to the raven. Strangely enough, this raven is again referred to al-ghurab in the Quran. And maybe perhaps the birds in general, these flying creatures, are related to the directions, because ghurab has something to do with the west, maghrib, maghribain, the setting or withdrawing of the sun. And it also has to do with the color black as well. Something that is like what we would call a raven today, that Allah calls al-ghurab in the Quran. And this is the story about these two brothers, where one of them kills the other unjustly, keyword unjustly, and the other brother basically has the opposite idea. He thinks that his death would somehow resolve him of all sins, and his sin will be transferred to his murderous brother. So you have a kafir and a mushrik, definitively. So this ghurab, it'd be interesting to find out what this word means. يَبْحَثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And show them how to yuwari, or conceal, or cover something of that idea. This is related to shame or evil of his brother. So clearly that's the translation we have to go off, is crow or raven. And ravens have been told all throughout our legends, often in a pair. Maybe that's why the word is mentioned twice in the Quran. And what's interesting is the word corvus, qaraba, clearly bears resemblance to gharab, ghurab, crow, corvus, corb. And we see mention of the Bible talking about this, the Talmud, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Christian understandings, Germanic cultures of Odin, a northerner, and he has these ravens as messengers. So this is something very interesting to me, given that, I don't think people have applied the Quran in its full due. Ravens are all the time, they were used for messages. And I imagine that, some of these birds used for messages. I mean, think about this, right? There's a crow that is a mount for this character in Hinduism. And it survived several destructions, living on a tree on Mount Meru, which I have always showed you is the cosmic axis. It's related to this cosmic axis in the North Pole. The national bird of some countries, it's in Zoroastrianism, black wings. Okay? So this creature is associated with the color black. Another creature is associated with the color red. Is there something going on? Then we have this idea in mythology and Native Americans that there was a bird responsible for thunder, in Arabic known as rad, arad, a bird for rain. The thunderbird controls the upper world, while the underworld is governed by the great horned serpent. Again, you have this dichotomy between birds and serpents. And so maybe these birds are something very extraordinary, to say the least. If you just read into this, you can see that this is not just created in a vacuum. This is still used to this day as symbols of these people. And nobody can trace where the origin of this myth is. Again, Pokemon comes to mind, right? You have those legendary birds. It's like I could talk ad nauseum, really. But Allah shows us all kinds of signs. Hopefully the chat is still doing good. Okay. Yeah, it's about 2 hour 30-minute mark. So I think we're gonna try to, let's see here. Any questions in the chats? Yeah, interesting. The command. So these birds are kind of, these flying things are like domesticated, like the character in Game of Thrones commands the fire to come out as if it's like listening, right? It has a sentience. It follows certain rules set for the universe. And the fire comes in with the command for dragon. Yeah, I agree, Chris. I think that the Quran has no contradictions. I'm curious how you guys have determined the Quran is preserved. The way I determined is just by reading the Quran and believing it's from God. Allah makes sure to tell you, He challenges you to disprove the book. Nobody has done it. This is where my interest years ago came with the Quran, because the Quran is the only book, only form of literature, communication, media we have that cannot be disproven. It's just the meanings have been interpolated to obscure its significance clearly. That's why Sunnis believe the Quran is not preserved. Imagine the people that they tell you should be following this book, this only guidance that we have at this time. They believe it's not preserved. Shias believe the same thing. Not to mention all the people that don't even follow it. Christians and Jews and atheists and the like. I don't know actually if these birds have anything to do with weather phenomena. That seems to be implied. But yeah, I mean, angels obviously are part of that paradigm. Let's look at that actually verse. That's interesting verse you put up there. So it's chapter 13, verse 13, right? I believe that's the chapter for thunder, right? Ar-Ra'd. And the thunder glorifies him with praise, and the angels from fear of him. And he sends a sawa'iq, striking whoever he wills. Now, thunderbolts don't exist in our world, in our scientific discourse. Thunderbolts are something only from ancient mythology. So what are thunderbolts? Notice they put here thunderclaps, because they don't know what to call this, a sawa'iq. But it's clearly something that just paralyzes an entire civilization in an instant. Sa'iqan, unconscious. This is how we reconcile these things. We look at how the root is used in the Quran, and then we go into the nitty-gritty of what it could mean. First, we make the associations, the connections. This is part of reconciliatory works, right? So thunder is just a sound. How could that be a physical phenomenon that strikes things? That would be lightning. That's called barq. So clearly, like for example, this creature, this raven in mythology, is associated with thunder, thunderbird. The buraq that the Prophet apparently rode on, and Ibrahim as well, is associated with baraq, lightning, as fast as lightning, right? Because it's for travel. I'm just putting this stuff out there for you guys to reflect as well. And I reflect on it as well. So I appreciate V for that. Yeah. Hannah Banana, welcome to the stream. I'm of the opinion, and you can take it or leave it, but I'm of the opinion that the Qur'an is preserved independent of humanity. Yeah, we did memorize it, but memorization comes from the word for guarding, protecting. And when you think about it, right? What are they guarding? What is being guarded? Sure, you can memorize the Quran and you can actually maybe derive some benefit, intelligible understanding. But clearly, even if all of the people were removed from the earth that memorized the Quran, it would still be here. Because they could easily do that, right? If you control the world and you want to get rid of the scripture, which is a threat to your power nexus, all you have to do is eliminate anyone that memorizes the Quran. Why are those people around? And why haven't they done that? Because I'm sure every time they try to get rid of this book, it will still be protected. It will still always be there. If we didn't have the internet, it would still be here. We will always have some kind of a mercy with this particular book. So the people memorizing it is just, one way that it survived. It can survive however Allah wants. They certainly did try to burn Qurans. And guess what? We still have the Quran. They're burning Qurans to this day. Sola Qur'ana, Rocky Bobo, do you think that all these creatures will be seen again before the last hour, or will they remain hidden from us? I think they will be seen again. This is why this information is just becoming an interesting topic of engagement, like many things. I think they will be seen again because everything described in the Quran applies as much to the future, relevant to us and our descendants, as it does to the past. Obviously, it's in the present as well, right? But just it's unseen, it's hidden. So as we get closer to the hour, Rocky Balboa, we are going to see the culmination of things. We're going to see the free will start to shrink a bit because Allah's story is being not just exalted, but confirmed and established and enshrined as time goes on. Okay. Quran equals the fitra and the natural world. That is what ad-din al-Islam refers to. In fact, Allah talks about in the last surahs, Surah An-Nasr, He says, enter the deen Allah. Enter Allah's deen. How do you enter a deen? There's some kind of a fabric of our world that will never be changed. It will always be it would just always remain, and that will become more pertinent, and that will become more established and visible, evident as time goes on. So think about it, right? You have this world that's corruptible, correct? The dunya, people cause corruption in the dunya. That will not happen in the hereafter. That will not happen on the day of judgment. They'll all be cleansed and wiped away to leave only what was always there behind the scenes, the deen. Allah perfected the deen. The deen is something physical as well. That's why you can enter it. Enter the deen, the natural order, the verdict, the jurisdiction, the definitive statement of Allah's supremacy. The deen of Allah. People will enter into it in crowds. So, yeah. I think this knowledge is becoming popular now because things are changing in our world. Have you seen the Aurora Borealis? I'm sure you have. You've seen how shafaq. I'm not sure what you mean, Hayana Banana. What's the title of your video that explains the meaning of the hadith author's name? Oh, now I know what you mean. You're talking about Bukhari. I think that was in Hadith Apocalypse Livestream, episode 1, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, if you're unaware, Bukhari literally means steam-powered, something to do with steam. Okay, there you go, Bukhari. Nawawi means nuclear power. Nasa'i means feminist. Just interesting they throw that in there. In the oils, the toxic oils they have given to basically the Muslim world, the most impoverished parts of the world tend to be Muslims in there. What have they given them? They've given them steam lubricants. These vegetable oils that are toxic. I should do a live stream on health, actually. That'd be a good topic. This is burned and it's put in our system and gives us cardiovascular issues, among other things. Yeah, I mean, it's anyone's guess what Qur'an means. That root has to do with reading. Something you read. My brother on the Endgame Islam channel, Brother Uwais, may Allah bless this brother, he came to the same conclusion that it's a reading. It's not just recitation, vain repetition and having contests who's the best reciter or not. It's actually understanding the reading of this book, thinking. When you read a contract, do you just sing the contract? No. It relates to reading consciously. Because this document does function like a contract. It functions to give you the terms and conditions of your existence. Your Creator is so merciful. He gives you all the things outlined to you in one book. And you just have to use your common sense. Al-Fatiha functions very much like a contract. You're making an oath. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. So what's interesting is yeah, it's just very interesting that the longest verse in the Quran has to do with honoring contracts. Okay, I don't know if we should go on a bit longer. I did want to bring some more things here. So we have this concept of dabbatan al-ard and dabbatan min al-ardi. What's the difference? One is from the earth, one is the earth. Creature of the earth, creature from the earth. I don't know what the difference is actually like, but suffice it to say, this is the only time we have this type of phrasing, right? So in the first understanding, it says, we will bring forth for them a creature. And it's akhrajna. It's like brought out of something, right? Adabatan min al-ardi. So comes from the bowels of the earth. I don't know how that happens, but from it. Tukellimuhum, communicating with them, that unless we're of Allah's signs not certain. This is really the test, right? To find certainty in things from the unseen. Because Allah is telling us. Then the other one is Dabatal Ard. And this one is related to Sulaiman, interestingly enough. We decreed upon Sulaiman the death, and nothing incited to the jinns, the devils, that were working for Sulaiman, that he died except a dabbatu al-ardi. This is slightly different because it would have said dabbatan min al-ardi. Again, I can't tell you definitively what that means because it remains to be understood, but we have this word in the Quran, bahimata. Bahimatu, the beasts. Beasts of al-an'am. Al-an'am are clearly, chapter 6 of the Quran is called al-an'am. And this is something we call like grazing cattle, whatever it means. It's something very, when they're from Allah's favors to mankind. Doesn't this word bahima remind you of something? A quadruped creature, I already mentioned. So, when we go and look at this, there is a behemoth in the Bible, in the book of Job. A great beast, exactly how it's translated here. It's anyone's guess what it means, but funny enough that people have overlooked this word. A great beast. Some have made the connection it's a water ox, some kind of animal creature that's in the water that like walks on fours, that's titanic in size. This painting gives the creature tusks, so you can kind of allude to what it might be. This is from the book of Job, Ayub, and they even admit the book of Job was written by a poet. Take now behemoth, whom I made as I did you. So don't take this as God's word, but just think about why this exists. He eats grass like the cattle. Allah says, behemoth al-an'am. Cattle are known to eat grass. His strength is in his loins, his might in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stand up like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are like tubes of bronze, his limbs like iron rods. He is the first of God's works. Only his maker can draw the sword against him. The mountains yield him produce, where all the beasts of the field play. Mountains of Qaf. He lies down beneath the lotuses. Those are things that are in the water. So he's underneath in the water somewhere. In the cover of the swamp reeds, the lotuses embower him with shade. That means they're above him. This creature is in the water somewhere, walking around, probably having an island on its back, how large it is. The lotuses embower him with shade. The willows of the brook surround him. He can restrain the river from its rushing. That's how large they are. He is confident the stream will gush at his command. Can he be taken by his eyes? Can his nose be pierced by hooks? So this is paired with al-hut, which is a predominantly sea creature, while this one seems to be amphibious, sea and land. And behemoth is usually always demonstrated to be an elephant. Whether it's an elephant or not, they even show you in recent films. This is from Godzilla. This is a creature that is titanic in size. We have an entire chapter in the Quran called The Elephant. Elephants are known for having tusks. Okay. Some of them have died. Maybe it's offspring. Like, for example, this is a understanding, a species of giant elephant from Eastern kingdoms. I just think about this for a second, right? In the Quran, you have this idea of the elephant. Not multiple elephants, just one. And when we look around us, we see that there are remains petrified. Probably not of the elephant. It could be one of them. I think that this creature is far bigger. But this could very well be offspring. Just look at a channel called Stellium 7. He did all the field work. May Allah guide him and keep him on the path of truth. And yeah, you can look for yourself. There are too many anatomical similarities in this mountain in Spain, where they tell us the Phoenicians had a colony, and the Phoenicians had elephants all over the places. They even say the Punic Wars by Hannibal. Sounds kind of like Ahmed bin Hanbal. Hannibal led elephants against Rome. The same thing we see about, because the Carthaginians are Phoenicians, the same thing we see with the Quraysh. They tell us that Mecca was attacked by Yemen. Yemen is usually called Saba in Islamic history. There are many such mountains called Elephant Mountain, even the one I showed you. And let me see here. Al-Fil. Al-Fil, the elephant. There was an army by Abyssinians from the south attacking Mecca, which was north of it. And the birds are the things that were sent to destroy the army. They're companions of the elephant. To be a companion of something, it means you're residing in a place that's not your home. Otherwise, you'd be called Ahl. Ahl is like your family, your home. Ahl al-Bayt. But this creature is so large that its human residents were like residing on it. It's amazing to me. And this means elephant. I mean, you can translate it whatever you want, but there's exactly 6 surahs paired with each other that are named after animals. Al-Ankabut, Al-Fil, Al-An'am, Al-Baqarah, Al-Nahl, Al-Namal. 6. And funny enough, we have an idea of this, that turtles, elephants, maybe somehow this became divided. Maybe somehow, I don't know. But clearly there is some kind of support system for the world. Maybe not the whole world, but this idea of a giant sea monster or vast sea turtle that has islands on its back and swallows ships kind of sometimes enters the discourse as Sirtan. Sirtan is used for the constellation Cancer, as well as crabs. In fact, it mentions it here. Zaratan. This is a crab, a giant crab. And it lives in the sea, and it's just interesting. All the plants grow on its back as well. So there are things of immense size in this realm. No doubt about it. We were of immense size once upon a time. It's almost like things shrink with time. So here we have some Alexander romance, supposedly. There's a crab of vast proportions, 2 birds like ravens, and donkeys. All of this stuff is symbolic. It's not meant to be accurate in details. It's only accurate in the main general idea. Like I mentioned in my other stream, the great whales is from the word for dragon. Serpentine creatures. They were singled out in Genesis as being created specifically on the 5th day. So maybe this has something to do with the dabbat min al-ard and dabbat al-ard. It's just a theory. Take it or leave it. Hitana, whom I talked about, that these things are basically still venerated to this day. Al-An'am is interesting because Allah singles out 8 of them, pairs. And let me see if I can find it. Was this the one? Here, let me see if I can find it. I'm going to end the stream soon, guys, because I got through basically what I wanted to get through. Yeah, 8 mates of the grazing livestock. Yeah, it's just interesting, we have to really look at the Quran with new eyes. Even this one here. An-Nahl. Now, obviously, this is a creature that Allah inspires with transmission. Wa-awha. Exactly the same way that Allah inspires messengers. It's a communication system. So the bee is given commands. And by the way, this is not bee, it's bees. Bees. I don't know why they failed to translate chapter 16 as the bees, even though, Nahla would be bee, singular. This is bees. Anyway, Allah tells him to take from the mountains. Clearly, Qaf mountains. These mountains are massive. They're like the container of the world. Buyutan, homes. And from the trees, ash-shajar. These are forests. We've never ever could imagine they could be forests. And from what they ya'arishun, construct. This is from the same word for arsh, arch. Something that's erected. Okay. Well, what's interesting is tells them to eat from all the thamarat. And usluki, insert subula rabbiki dhulula. Not sure what that means. Comes forth from their bellies sharabun mukhtalifun alwanuhu. In it is healing and for an-nas. Surely a sign for a people that reflect. Constantly he's using these examples saying to reflect. Now what's interesting is it's assumed to be honey because you've already said this is bees. But he doesn't say that's exactly what they have. Yes, honey can come in different colors, for sure. And it is a healing. And it comes from the bellies of the bees. No problem with that. But what if that's a sign that we can access of something hidden as well? I'm not throwing out the bees argument. I think that exists. Most of the things that they have translated these creatures as are but signs of the original thing. And honey is mentioned in the Quran in Jannah. Asr, asl. But it's not in this verse. It's in chapter 47. So we have these things called peris, winged spirits. Bees are winged for sure. But what's interesting is they're kind of given a positive, sometimes negative connotation. They live within the mountains of Qaf. They're identified as from the jinn world. Not sure what to make of it, but it's interesting that the word for these fairies, which are smaller, sometimes larger, but sometimes smaller, they have some. There is some kind of a understanding from mythology that they're winged beings, and this is just a guess, really. I don't know what to make of this, but an-nakhl, the bees, is something more profound than simply just a type of insect that, sure, many benefits in it. Sure, there's much to look at there. But what if Allah is pointing to something greater that we have now called bees because they do the same function, basically? Maybe they're the same size. An-namal is interesting as well because an-namal have a specific location. An-namal, the ants. They're shown to have a female kind of representative, and we know the ants to be female as well. She actually speaks. And yes, you can say these are enchanted creatures that speak. No problem with that. But maybe something that's going on is we have called ants today something. That the original version of that was something else. Similar. And we have an instance of this, fingertips. Something small, something minute. Could there be smaller creations of Allah as signs? It could very well be. I'm just putting it out there to kind of, give you some kind of a context, open your horizons a bit. No, Indiana Genesis, not at all the case. The Illuminati is not as powerful as you think. They're just given enjoyment in this time that will quickly fade away. It's not up to them. We have an understanding from the Quran that qadar is something that no human can change. So whatever Allah wills, that's what will happen. We don't know what that will come from. We have this semblance that everything is, we're not created as robots. We can choose what to discuss, we can choose how to react, we can choose what to believe, we can choose what to do in this life. But at the end of the day, whatever Allah wants to happen will happen. And He exists outside of time. He doesn't have to wait for us. He knows exactly where everything will conclude. So it could very well be that the Masjid al-Haram that humanity was exiled from, it even mentions that the Masjid, we were driven away from this. The Jews still believe this because they believe they're Beni Israel, and this applies to Beni Israel. And clearly Beni Israel is not just Jews. It's mentioned like over 50 times, Beni Israel. More than Beni Adam. So clearly when Allah says you return to Him on the day, that's a location. You return to Him. Didn't you see that everything is going to come back, converge after it's diverged for this period of time? There is a term ajal that is pending. And once that term ends, that's it. The test is over. So, yeah, it's not about the Illuminati doing this. They just happen to be given this unique role to create this deception. Shaitan is given charge over who? The people who are not mukhlasin. They're not loyal to Allah. And so the Illuminati are some of the most deceived people in the world. You could refer to this as the ma'ashar of al-jinn wal-insi. This kind of assembly of jinns and humans working to demonize and fabricate and obfuscate and strategize against the believers. And of course, against Allah and whatever he plans. But his plan, by definition, envelops everything they have done. So it's all accounted for, right? It's kind of like I mentioned earlier in the stream, maybe you didn't hear. Musa went to an appointment and he left his people. That was their messenger. Bani Israel had a messenger, Musa and Harun. Harun was kind of given some supervision privileges over them. But they clearly overpowered him, right? As he states. And what did they make? They listened to this Asamiri person. Asamiri, the Samarian, he made this calf from their treasures. They worshiped this thing they made with their hands. Musa comes back, angry and grieved, and he's just had it. He's got the book now. He's got the scripture. It was revealed to him. Doesn't that describe our time period? So, something to think about. Hope you guys enjoyed this stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm going to end the stream now. Peace be upon you all. I'll catch you next time, inshallah, whenever that is. Peace.